we're live. 6:59. Oh, just turned 7, so nailed it right before. So I was early, technically, and I count that as being early. If you see, I've got a brand new chair. Awesome. That was my Christmas or my birthday present for yesterday, which was awesome. And thank you guys all for all the birthday wishes. That was fantastic. An outpouring of emotion was fantastic. Yesterday was great. I got a lot of stuff done. It was awesome. My legs are very tired from my hill run, so I'm paying the price today for being young. Now I'm not young anymore. Tonight we're going to talk about turbos, and it's an interesting topic because whenever I post videos of turbos, no matter what I run them on, whether I run them on like the K Series Honda or an LS3 or a Junkyard 4.8 or the Cadillac or Buick, or we've run turbos on lots of different stuff, and the thumbnail is a picture of me having a turbo sitting on small block Chevy. I have run them on small block Chevys. Uncle Squirrel's in the house. Robert, go for broke. I've run turbos on lots of stuff, and they work really well. And invariably, with some of the comments that I'll get, and that's usually what we talk about, or comments that I get, the interesting thing is that I get comments from people that are like, oh, that's a terrible turbo. You need a different turbo on there. This turbo is so much better. It's bigger. This wheel has this and has this inducer and this exducer. And, it takes this much energy to drive it and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I love, and I can, with the right kind of people, get very technical about that. But my question is always this: even when we start talking about really esoteric stuff about the turbos, what invariably happens is the people that I'm talking to at some sort of hopefully lower engineering level for me to be able to understand it, the concern that I have, and what always happens with these people, is they're giving me math or theory or what should happen, and they're almost never giving me what actually did happen or what does happen. Those are different things. I understand these absolutes. Okay, if we run a turbo and we run it in its island of maximum efficiency, and then my question is always, if you've ever seen a compressor map, and I'm going to be doing the video on compressor maps. I know I keep promising that, but I'm actually going to do that. I'm just having to learn a couple of things before I'm able to do that, to do it properly, to do it justice. If you look at the island of efficiency and you look, okay, the center island of efficiency, let's say, is this big on the map, being the size of this whole screen. So the center island of efficiency is this big, which means, and we'll go over this in the video, that we can run different points, different places in that island of efficiency and still have the same efficiency. It's all of that area that they're outlining there, assuming that that's 100% accurate. All of that area is 69% efficient. That's the best. Everything else outside of that is 68 or 67 or lower, depending on how far away you go from that center island and in which direction you go in. So everything is 69%. So let's say that we're in the 69% island. My first question is, okay, if we're in the 69%, what if we're in the lower right-hand corner of the 69%? What if we're in the lower left-hand corner? What if we're in the upper right-hand corner or upper left-hand corner? What if we're exactly spot in the middle? Is there anything to be gained from being anywhere specifically in that island of efficiency? Because the thing that happens in that island of efficiency, of maximum efficiency, we actually have different boost levels. There's not just one boost level. So we have a range of boost over on this side. And then we have on this lower side, we have a range of airflow, or as we calculate that out, that's actually horsepower. So this bottom side, which you'll see on a map, would be down here. And this would be airflow. And this side over here, that would be boost. So if we look at the island of efficiency, we have a range of boost coming across, and then we have a range of power coming across, and then they intersect and in this area. So we can run different power levels and different boost levels and still maintain in that island of efficiency. So my question is, do we get better gains from some combination that uses the lower boost level area of that island of efficiency, of maximum efficiency, or do we get better from use? And these are the kinds of weird engineering questions that I have. My real question is, and usually for these people that I'm talking to, is that what happens when we run a turbo on a motor? I like to start with just very basic things. So if we get let's say we get a motor on the dyno, which is what I do, put it on the dyno, we hook a turbo up to it, by some means, stock exhaust manifolds, shorty headers, dedicated tubular race turbo headers, whatever they are, we hook that up and we run a turbo. And we have some, I always look at it as we have some NA starting point for the turbo. And then we have an NA power output for the motor. And then we put the turbo on and then we add boost to that. So if we have an NA starting point and then we add boost to that, when we add 7.5 pounds, just because it's easy math, we gain 50%. Sometimes we gain a little bit more, depending on, in my opinion, depending on charge temperature. Sometimes we gain a little bit less. My question is, and the question for today is that we started all this out was, how much does the turbo come into play there? And does it come into play everywhere? Like, does it come into play at 7 pounds and 10 pounds? Or does it just come into play at 25 or 30 pounds when we're at or near the limits of these turbos? And that's always been my question, because I get guys that tell me all the time, no, if you put a bigger turbo on there and you're running 7 pounds, you will see more power, absolutely, than the smaller turbo. I'm like, yeah, but we're at 7 pounds, we're running 550 horsepower. And this is a 750 horsepower turbo. So the turbo will support a lot more than that. So it's kind of, we don't have a map for it, but it's kind of in its efficiency range. So do you think you can put a turbo on there that at 7.5 pounds is going to do a lot better than that one? And let's assume that the small turbo, the small cheap eBay turbo that we have, is already making the formula. Do you think that if we put another turbo on there, this double throwdown, CEA double ball bearing, ability wheel, whatever it is that makes it better, some sort of bigger, better design, how much can we get from doing that? So if we've already improved the power output by 50% because we've added turbo and it has an intercooler and we got good gas in it, we've got plenty of timing in it, the charge temperature's right, it's dropping the charge temperature, the intercooler is doing what it should, and we've and in the case of running 85, since we didn't gain very much or any at all on the NA motor, we gained a bunch on the turbo. There's a good chance that even with the cheap turbo, we might be doing better than the formula, like we did with the 3800. That's a perfect example. We did way better than the formula. I'm not convinced that we got all of the NA power out of that combination. I think that that's probably part of it. But if let's say we're doing better than the formula, a little bit better with our cheap turbo, is there a turbo out there? And I get this all the time, that where guys tell me, oh no, you put this the expensive turbo. Got to put this big good turbo on there. You don't want that offshore stuff because that stuff doesn't work. Those are old designs. Those designs are from the 80s or the 70s or the 40s or whenever they're telling me that they're from, and you'd gain a lot of power. My question is anybody out there, has anybody ever out there don't talk to me about theories and don't talk to me about what should happen, what might happen. Have you ever seen that done? Has there ever been a test where somebody has said, look, this turbo was working good, it was doing at the formula or better than the formula, but then we put this really, really good one on there and we gained like 60 or 70 horsepower at the same boost level? I honestly don't see how that's even possible. I see how that's possible at 27 pounds or 37 pounds. I just don't see how that's possible in the range that the vast majority of the people that watch my videos are running. The most guys, because honestly, if you've got a 4.8 or a 5.3 with a cam in it, and you're running 25 pounds of boost, you're 4-digit power levels, and you're getting to the area where you should be concerned about other things, like the strength of the block or the pistons, or why didn't you put ring gap in it, or a lot of other things that you should be concerned about. But my question is, I want to know, I want to see in this normal, regular guy kind of range, not pro mod stuff, not that stuff, not 40 pounds of boost on a turbo rotary or 2J or whatever that is. I want to see in this normal range, how much more power can they be at 10 pounds or 14 pounds on this 3800? How much more power can they be when we're already doing better than the formula with this like inexpensive GT45? Is there another turbo that's going to do a lot better at 600 horsepower? I don't see how that's possible. I want it to be possible. Like, I want to put a magic turbo on there, just like I want to put magic camshafts on there or a magic intake manifold. but but I don't see how that's possible. I don't see how that's going to work. An intake manifold we obviously can do stuff with, because then we can shift where the thing wants to make power. But I just don't see it in, like I said, in the realistic range that most of us talk about. And again, invariably when this discussion comes up, and I'm sure that I haven't even looked over the comments, but I'm sure that when the in the comments, there's going to be these theoretical discussions about, oh, this and this and this and whatever that is. It's the problem is that there's just no data to back that up. There's no, oh, well, but my friends, Joe Schmo ran this PTE 91 with the CEA billet wheel, and it did this and this and it did this, and so therefore that tells me something. It doesn't tell me anything, because we didn't run it against anything else, and that's what I want to see. And I also don't want to see it on a pro mod motor. I want to see it on normal kind of things that I run. That's 1,000 horsepower or less kind of thing. Now, one thing I know for sure is when I ran the Big Bang, and this is the reason that I stepped up to good turbos. When I was running the Big Bang stuff, we ran the two T76 turbos from CX Racing, and we ran those. And the reason that I chose those, because they were inexpensive, and I think the guys from CX Racing may have even supplied them to us for the test way back when. And so we ran them on the thing, and I was thinking, okay, we'll run twin turbos on it, because and these should be big enough for, I know what they're listing them at, but haven't never run them before that. I didn't know where they were. But since we ran two of them, I thought this is going to get us way into 1,000 horsepower range, and certainly we can't go much more than that on a stock bottom end anyway, because something's got to break, right? Because we all know that everyone's telling us pistons and rods are going to break at 10 pounds. Well, we know that that's not true anymore, obviously, and that's not true with almost any motor. I mean, anything that you would put ring gap in and tune properly, you can run a lot of power with, a lot more than most people think. And that's what the LS isn't the only one we can do that on. But the thing is, with those T76s, we ran them up to where we had to run so much boost, and we were making pretty good power. Like we made 1,300 with the 5.3 liter. But I think that we were getting to the point where those turbos just were not able to supply too much more power. And I don't have a map to look at, but I would also start to question where we were on the map at that high of a pressure ratio. So we did what we should have done to begin with. On the next 6 liter, on the Gen 3 6 liter, we put two much bigger turbos on it. Instead of having, maybe 1,500 horsepower with a turbo, or 14, or whatever the number is, and we were getting up close to that, we put 2,000 horsepower with a turbo on it. And then so now when we would get up to 14 or 1,500 range, there's still lots left. And so we had low back pressure, the turbos were working good. And in that sort of instance, obviously going up to a bigger, better turbo is good. But I think that's because we were getting near the limit of those smaller turbos. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about 1,500 horsepower range. Like I said, I want there to be something cool there. But and that's why when I tell people, I tell them what I tell them. I tell them that, yeah, if you want to make 700 horsepower, 750 horsepower, whatever, and I think we can make more than that with a 3,800, and I'm going to try in the little GT45, that's kind of the go-to size turbo. In my opinion, if you get something like that will support that kind of power, it's going to kind of do the same thing. It's the same thing with the S475. That's why I tell people you run an S475 or a VS Racing 7875 or the Force Performance 7875 that we ran. All of those things are going to, I think, kind of do the same thing. We might have a little bit difference in response rate. We definitely saw that with the bigger T6 S475 that we got from Summit Racing. But I think on the right motor, on a single turbo, that one might be a little bit better choice because it has a lot more hot side flow. It's not going to be as responsive, but it's not going to also run out of hot side flow before it runs out of compressor side flow. So there are applications for both of those. But that's my rant for tonight, is that I don't think we see big power changes from the great turbo versus just a good turbo that we all use, from online, the GT45 or the S475 or those kinds of things, the VS Racing stuff. I don't know that we see a big change from those unless we're way off on our turbo sizing, either the cold side or the hot side. If we get a really small hot side and we have a big enough cold side, like if we had a T3, T4, and the T4 side was an S475 and the T3 side was a GT28, that's not going to be a good combination. So that would be the wrong turbo. But other than in extreme examples like that, if the turbo is sized accordingly to flow the kind of airflow that it needs to support that kind of power level, I think it's probably going to do pretty well. So we'll see what you guys have. We'll see what you guys have to say. And by the way, Box 82 was our winner last night in the giveaway for the camshaft. It was very, very close. In fact, the next comment I think it was by Burning Tires, his was the next comment. So I have no idea in actual time, as those two were racing through the electronics, to appear in the comment section as they battled each other, bumping each other, and then one comment came before the other. So those were that's basically as close as you can get. And so those two guys were fighting it out. We have one winner, and he'll be getting the camshaft. And so I went back and scrolled back through all of the video and the comments to make sure that I went all the way back to before. And we had 4 guys that were all within like maybe 6 or 7 comments that all guessed the same thing. And then obviously everybody guessed after Lisa told us what the answer was. That's very easy. But so congratulations on that. And I have the other guys that won the other things, and that was a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys had a good time. So let's see what you guys got going on. Do any of the aftermarket companies, that's a good point. Do any of the aftermarket companies test longevity? I don't think that they do. I don't think you'll see longevity tests from, especially like offshore, inexpensive turbo stuff. I don't think that they do that. I don't think that they balance them. I don't think that they do any of that, unfortunately. And I've tested a lot of these obviously for a long time, but not in a car driving around for years and years and years. What I'm doing, I don't think is even the same as that, even though I may have run, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 800 dyno pulls on some of these turbos. I don't know that that's the same as driving them around, heating them up and bringing them back down and, driving them every day. But I think that because they've been running around, because they've been making it for a long time, I'm hoping that they work fairly well. And I know that those T76s that we have, we've had them for 10 years or whatever, and they're still working. So let's see. If a turbo is not working as hard, it's not making as much heat. So if a turbo is making 10 pounds of boost at 150 degrees, and turbo B is making 10 pounds of boost at 100 degrees, you end up with more air density. I would like to see turbos that would be that far off, that would be 50% off in charge temperature. I think that probably would be pretty rare. Gail Banks did a lot of testing on this with this data monster. Basically asking if a GTX with all the bells and whistles is actually a big improvement from a GT turbo. Supposedly the GTX series is going to have more headroom and spool quicker. All of that may be true. I haven't looked at specifically those turbos to see what they did, what exactly they changed. I'd have a pretty good idea if I read exactly what they changed to make that happen. And I'd like to see that. And what often happens with these turbos is when they make a change and tell you, hey, look, like, hey, we changed the wheel to do this. Oftentimes, like with camshafts, it's a trade. So if we clip the wheel and now it will support more peak power, maybe now it's not quite as responsive. And maybe it has more charge temperature in the middle part of the boost curve. I mean, there are lots of things that you can look at. And I think that I'm hoping that with turbos, like with everything else, that turbos for like Ray J's and stuff from the 60s and 70s and 80s, that turbos are better now. And I think that they are. But my question is, if we have a turbo that's 10% better, how much is that actually even if it has 10% more flow, how much is that when both of them can support the same amount of power? Is it that much? I doubt very seriously if we had 2 turbos that we would see what I was reading there, that one of them was 50 degrees hotter coming out of the turbo than the other. Certainly not in the RPM or not in the boost range that I'm talking about. At 30 or 40 pounds, at 10 pounds, I doubt you'd see anywhere near a 50-degree change if the ambient was 100. I mean, that's a 50% change in temperature, and that's a lot as a percentage. If it's 50 degrees difference going from 420 to 470 at the very maximum amount at 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds, whatever that number is, I can see that stuff, because then as a percentage, it's much less. But like I'm talking about, in the range that we're talking about here in the 1,000 horsepower area, I just don't know that that's going to make a difference. Got any little turbos for sale? 7 pounds, 2-barrel, 289. There's a lot of stuff online that you could put on there. You can even go get a diesel turbo for something like that. What do you think of the first TPI? I've never tested it. The guys at Westech, I think, had one on one of the small blocks that they had way back, but I don't remember. They didn't compare it to anything. I switched from a 6466 Gen 2 ball bearing to a 6466 Gen 2 CEA ball bearing and gained power from T4 to V band. So you change the housing, because if you went from a T4 housing to a V band, so you change the housing. Same exhaust AR, 800 horsepower versus 835 at 1 bar. So did you test those back to back on the same day, or was this done a long time over time? And the flange wasn't leaking. The thing that and was this done on a chassis dyno? And so all of that stuff needs to be asked, because I haven't seen lots of the same kind of repeatability on a chassis dyno that I see on the engine dyno, especially with turbo stuff. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, because you've changed. A CEA wheel is going to be different, right? The wheel itself is actually going to be different. So if you change the wheel design, maybe that's possible. Maybe the older design wasn't as good. But 35 horsepower at the same pressure seems like quite a bit. The cheaper eBay turbos never make the same amount of power as, say, a Garrett or equivalent size. I would agree with that. I ran a test and labeled it, 76 millimeter versus 76 millimeter. That's just because that's what CX Racing called their turbo. It was a 76 millimeter because they knew that was a popular Google search number. I don't think that the turbo was actually that big, and their 76 millimeter didn't make anywhere near what the 76, 75 precision turbo. I mean, it was about 500 horsepower difference, but I never tested them both at 7 pounds. And at 7 pounds, it might be that the 76, 75 precision turbo on the motor that we tested on could have been closer to surge. I don't know that it was working very well at that low boost level. Does anyone make a flow chart? They make compressor maps, but not for all turbos. There are many ways to improve an exhaust-driven turbo's performance through coatings. Yep, got a new chair. Richard, would it be better run singles or twins on a 4,300-pound Trek driving on the street? We'll turn it up for the track. Both of them will do the same thing if you size them correctly, so that you can make the same power with either one of them. Just depends on which you like better or which one's packaged better. I don't know what this is. A Emerge chair, I think, is what it says on it. I'm guessing. Richard, have you ever tested a twin scroll turbo on your Honda? Not and use the twin scroll. I mean, I have Hondas that are twin scroll turbos, but I've never had them plumbed that way. Dan, don't beat around the bush. Tell us how you feel, man. Can I run a turbo after the catalytic converters? Yeah, the guys from STS used to do that. They would run them after the cats. It's not a big deal. What about the Excel TPI looking manifold? We had one on our track cars when I worked at Kart 101 Las Vegas. That video is up. I tested the Excel TPI, the Super Ram stuff. That's Lingenfelter designed that, and we've tested that many times. I tested also on the LT1. Getaway back at 5 a.m. All right, man. Stay safe out there. Yeah, I did remote mount turbos also if you're looking for that. The big turbo companies do longevity. I'm sure BorgWarner does, and so does Garrett and those guys, but none of these inexpensive ones. How about a twin scroll on, like a Garrett on an LS? It seemed to improve the spool time. I think that's definitely possible. I've never tested it. I've run turbos, divided turbos like that, but I've never run the Y pipe that I have ends in a V band, and so it's just open. It ends in a V band, and then I put whatever V band to T3 or T4 adapter that I have, so it will never get truly exhaust from one side to one side, one side to one side. It will never do that the way that I have this set up. Richard, when are you going back to Ninja Warrior? I can't, because I can't. It's unless I was able to get on and get back in that kind of shape, which I'm not in right now. I had to, the last time I went, I had to wait in line for 8 days. And so I can't be away from, I don't want to be away from my family for that long. And I don't want to be away not earning money for that long. I have to work and earn a living. And that was a great thing. And I loved it. And it was much nicer doing that, spending 8 days in a tent at Venice Beach where it was at least warm than it was spending, I think I spent 4 or 5 in the snow and the rain in Denver, which that was not cool. Nitrous can definitely help a spool. Yeah, Dan, NASCAR wanted to test your engines on chassis does. You ran them in 3rd gear. That's a good idea. Or you could make your setup have a drop gear too. That would be cool. I got a 7875 for my 5.3. That's a good choice. Why don't they have variable geometry compressors? I think that would be hard to do. Although they need to have like counter rotating, like they do have props. That would kind of be cool. Punk, I don't know. I didn't see you ask about a kit. That must have been earlier. Yeah, the birthday was fantastic. I got to eat cake. Ever run a sequential turbo setup? No, only on the chassis dyno with factory stuff like a Supra Turbo or the RX-7. Yeah, the BorgWarner guys, that they're turbo manufacturers, so they test their stuff. You're gonna put a kit on your LS2, Punk? Let me know what's going on. Unless you have do they have them for your chassis? Because I make sure that it fits, because we've tried kits before and they didn't even work on the engine dyno, let alone in a car. Why does it seem like there's almost no big turbo cars that run nitrous too? I would think that they would with big turbos on it. A lot of times when the turbo cars are also running big motors. If you have a 632-inch big block with turbos on it, you can get those spooled up. Yeah, Karen, I would agree that you could piece together a kit for $1,500. Tell us about your love of 924 motors. Only if they're yellow. But it did need boost though. Tom Bailey ran 632 at 235. Nice. Sick week. When running nitrous and turbo, at what boost should you cut the nitrous off? At whatever you want, depending on where you want to get the what you want to get your turbo up to. A lot of that is a function of your 60-foot time and what you're doing on the track. Usually, or sometimes the guys, if you run the nitrous through the whole thing, it will make more power and it will go as long as you don't break it. But a lot of guys will do it to get the turbo for the like 60-foot time or the first 100 feet or whatever they're doing it. They have it on a timer or a boost or something shut off. Harlan, what would be a good turbo for a basic 350 with a carb manifold? I want to blow through it. If you're in the 700 horsepower range, it's that GT45. Oh, Randall, yeah, some of them I guess would be dual. That would be dual power adders, and they don't want to do that. Dan, Brock Fraser knew his turbo stuff. He was the lead engineer for Borg Warner Turbo Division. He had a Porsche Turbo, by the way. Yeah, but was it a 924 Turbo Carrera GT? Only Porsche guys will know what that is. And we're going to remove you. I don't think there's any reason to go with a sequential turbo. Sequential turbos are cool, but they're really complex to make them work. That's why OEMs did them, and they can do stuff like that. But the average guy, that's a little bit harder. I will see to it that Summit sends you a catalog of ceramic coated headers and DIY ceramic coating. Seeing is believing. I don't disbelieve that coatings work. I know the guys at Summit really well, so I do stuff for them, so that's not a problem. I'm going to be testing some of their cams, some of their Ford cams here coming up. But I know that ceramic coating will help keep the heat in. It would be interesting to see boost response, but it doesn't show as well on the engine dyno because of the artificial load. So we know what they do. No, I was not hungover today. Thoughts on an Eagle SIR connecting rods and 8-pound supercharger kit? Yes, that will work fine. never cut the NO2 is the right answer, Matt. That's good. You don't need much nitrous to eliminate turbo lag. That's what I mean. If you just use it off the line to get it going, once the turbo is spooled up, it will stay spooled up and happy for the rest of the run. So it just depends on what you're trying to get done. When in doubt, GT45 out. I've looked at intercooler piping kits for 360. The Ford Torino King Cobra was the 2-speed 9-inch. Did it come that way from the factory? It's like a 2-speed kickback, if anybody remembers what that is. (924s) are only good for supplying parts for VW bugs. That's not even an air-cooled motor. 944s and 928s, that's a different story. When I was looking at doing a video, I wanted to do 1,000 horsepower for $1,000. I think that that's possible. So I think you could gather together all the things that you need if you had a junkyard LS to do 1,000 horsepower for $1,000. All early sub 10-second B series Hondas ran big turbos. Yeah, I ran NOS with it. I mean, it's smart. If you have a 75 millimeter turbo on a sub 2-liter engine, and you want to get to spool up and you want to get it to 60 foot, nitrous is a good way to do that. Yeah, KO3 would be pretty small for a 289. The 289, you need to just go, you can buy one of these turbos for a couple $100 off of eBay, or you can go to the wrecking yard. I don't even know what price is now if you go get a diesel turbo for a stock 289. It will work for that. It'll make 7 pounds on that. But any of these eBay turbos are cheap. They're a couple $100. Yes, Matt knows it was a Le Mans car. Rock out of 964. Yeah, twin turboed it. Nice. The black truck is what I'm putting LS2 into. So you should be able to get a you should have a lot of, the fitment should be much easier on that. Your, let's see, 924 Carrera GT with a 917 engine. No, not a 917 engine. That'd be too much. Your opinion, who makes the best budget turbos and what size for 363 with the new OG TFS aluminum high port smog version head, looking for 800 horsepower? Do you want twins or singles for that? We ran the 363, I think, with a single, the one that I did, and 800 horsepower is very easy. That motor is going to make a lot of power with those heads on it. I would run a single 7875 for that, or a VS Racing 7875, or an S475 would work well for that, or twin GT 3076s or twin GT 35s, 3582s. Tony, Richard, I do a low budget LP gas conversion on my 87 Sentra hatchback, LP gas tank and 3-screw throttle body from a junkyard, LP gas regulator and 2 stopcocks. Race fuel almost for free. Nice. So tell me if that thing's running around. Let me know if it is boosted. What's going on? Any recommendations for a road race application? 700 and up small block Ford. Doing it NA would be difficult. Out of a 331, it would be really expensive. A boosted deal would be a lot easier. And maybe for a road race deal, we ran centrifugal blowers on ours, but I think a turbo would be even faster. I think it would be harder, a lot harder to make 1,000 horsepower for $1,000 with a Cadillac than it would be to do it with an LS. I think an LS would be a lot easier. I have run Jet Hot stuff. The guys from HP Performance, Jimmy, when they would send their turbo kits over, they would be Jet Hot coated, and they were nice. Yeah, you don't need the stock exhaust manifolds for the LS are really good turbo manifolds. Holley EFI kills the 1,000 horsepower budget. Could a 924 be repowered with hot TDI for diesel drifting competitions? Yeah, that'd be good. What's the most power I've made on the dyno is 1540, 1543. The fuel system would be you get injectors, and this is cheating a little bit, but you get the dual fuel injectors, which you can find at the wrecking yard, and then you decap those. And magically, you get the ones that you decap; they all work perfectly, and that's enough. Or you could get Decas too. You could get 80s. Yeah, I saw Nelson broke their dyno. Tom knows how to make power over there. I think the $1,000 horsepower for $1,000 was assuming you have the LS in a car already, so you can tune the factory ECU maybe. Wheelbase. My C30 NSX engine has a Garrett GTX 4088 twin scroll with exhaust split from each bank, but the response is soft. Turbo might be too large, but it makes 760 wheel horsepower. That's a lot. I think that's about where Jimmy was on the one that they raced that was running. They ran 10s in theirs. We're going to be doing some videos on it. And now he has a, he had bought another C30 engine, but unfortunately the guy that he bought it from, I think, was kind of a knucklehead. And it had a spun bearing and the rod was pretty blued. So rather than get another one, because he couldn't find a crank and a rod, the rod and the crank might be okay, but I don't like to run them when they turn that color. I don't like to redo them. The crank probably could have been turned, but it's hard for him to find a rod. So he just got a J series, a J32. So he went up in displacement and now he's got a turbo on that and it's running around. He called me today, got the AEM back because they had an issue with it. And now that's back and running around and he's making boost and it's running on E85 and he should be on the dyno before too long here. And I think that he's going to go race it. Yeah, they make some serious power, and it is pretty big money, but it's, you know, if you have it and you want it to be right, that's a good place to get it. It's a win yesterday, I guess 4, 118, 1543, and a turtle. Nice. I like the turtle idea, but we would stop though. I would swerve around that. Do you think running methanol would make a difference on your Big Bang LS? It's not going to change where we break something, I don't think. We ran just high octane race gas. We could make more power on E85 if I was comfortable running it at the combination of boost and timing that we were running. But we're not trying to make more power. Like we could make more power by making more power NA, and but I don't think we need to do that because we have 2,000 horsepower at our disposal if we turn the turbos up. So we can make enough power to get to where I'm assuming we didn't do it yet at 1543, but we have enough in reserve that we can get to the point where we're going to break something. We have to break a piston or a rod or something. I've seen people bend these Gen 4 rods on some of the stuff. I just don't know if they did it because of detonation or if they did it because it was just cylinder pressure. Did you guys see the stuff from the sick week or whatever? Whose was it? Freiberger posted it, but it was PFI Speed. I think that their wastegate stuck, and I thought that he said it was over 100 pounds, and he just blew the whole top of the motor off of that Honda. It's pretty impressive stuff. The cool thing is, if you look at it, the studs are still holding the head to the block. They just tore the block off. So the studs, the head studs, that's why I tell you, always use head studs. The head studs are actually stronger than the block is. It's pretty good. What EC do you recommend for a 6-liter, 1,000 horsepower, 400 trans? I only test with the Holly or Fast or MS3 Pro, so maybe you can use one of those. But other guys do it on factory ECUs also at that power level. Yeah, for the 1,000 horsepower, $1,000 deal, I would just use a stock truck, stock throttle body, stock heads. I would put springs in it. You can buy cheap springs. You could even do it with the right cam. You could do it with LS3 springs. I think that's where I was headed. Yeah, I blew the block in half. That was pretty serious stuff. Have you ever used HP tuners with the Ford? I haven't, because I don't tune with that. I'm not a tuner, so I don't use that stuff. Common and tractor pulling, rip the whole top of the block off. That's pretty serious stuff. The snake eater stuff are another. I have a set of those. I have a set of 1500s, which we've used in some high horsepower stuff. Running a torque storm with a BTR4 version 2 truck cam, L76 6 liter, only making it 6 pounds. Would there be any decent power gains with switching over to a centrifugally supercharged dedicated cam? No, there won't be. How much power are you making, Caleb? You're probably near the power limit of the motor, and how high are you revving it is the other thing. Those things need to run engine speed to make power. So if you're not at 6,500, you're not where that thing is going to be making more power. If you're shifting at 5,500 or 6,000, it will keep making power past that. And also, that's only a 750 horsepower blower. So if you're making 600 at the tire or 550 or something, you're getting up near the limit. If you're running a twin scroll on an LS, which I haven't tested, so I might not be able to answer this, would there be a benefit if you ran exhaust from 1872 to one side and 6543 to? Well, first of all, I just wanted to test if we ran all of them from one side and all of them from the other side, and then if that did anything, then I would be worried about swapping exhaust. Like I said, I think when we start talking about things like that, the trying to equalize the pulses so that it's even and feeds the turbo so it's happy or whatever. I just don't know how much of a gain there is from that over just having all the exhaust go to one side and then the other side, as opposed to having all the exhaust go to both sides. I don't know how much there is. I don't know what that benefit is. I can't quantify that. I don't know that having even cylinder firing or choosing them, if there's an optimum cylinder firing pairing that makes that actually work better, as opposed to just having all of the exhaust there and it driving the turbo. I don't know that pulsing does that. I don't have a feel for that. I want it to, but I don't know if it does. For lifters, we normally run whatever the wrecking yard came with or stock ones. Or LS7s, I think, are what most people recommend. I won't run solid lifters or solid rollers on any of the LS stuff. We run them on big blocks a lot, but I don't do that on LS stuff, and I don't think I ever will. Stock heavy valves on an 823 head. Thoughts on them for 1100 horsepower combo? You'll be fine. You have to have enough spring for your camshaft, but I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I wonder if the exhaust directing changes the sound. It should change the exhaust note, although the turbo does a really good job of like dampening a lot of that stuff out. What motor will we be working with on a dyno next? A small block Ford, the Cadillac, and the Dodge, more than likely. It would be expensive to test the twin scroll with a lot of different custom header setups for all that testing. That would be a lot. The only way to do that is if you had weird slip fit removable tubing sections that you could somehow do that with. But again, it'd be hard to build all of that. How much power do you think a set of 6973s with a 0.9 AR is good for on a 383 LS, 11-to-1 compression, and E85? I mean, I think that those are for two of those. 6973 is going to be like a GT45. That should be, and since you're running them as twins, I don't think that the 91 AR is going to hurt you. Those are going to be 4-digit turbos. Yeah, Dan, the scary thing is in drag racing when the 1471s would blow off into the crowd. That's why they put the safety straps and stuff, and they mandated those. The Catalytic is just going back together and going to be run because I think I have somebody that wants to buy it. I want to see it go in something. Have you floated valve springs from raising boost before? I don't think I have. I don't know that I've run into valve float from just boost. BMW has a V8 with 2 twin scroll turbos. Very cool. And on an OEM application, you would definitely be worried about more about response rate than you would be about ultimate power. Randall, I have a fresh run-in 445 FE that should sing pretty good on the dyno. Only has miles from Midwest drags. So are you drag racing, or where did the thing run? Two of the turbos were not going to make power past 5,000 RPM. Again, I just... Richard, where are you going to put a Ford 3.5 EcoBoost to the test? Punk, man, I'm sorry to hear about it. That's a tough deal. I dislike it's like I'm disrespecting him, calling him punk. I ain't no punk. Maybe I should add all of it in there, right? Richard, when are you going to put a Ford 3.5 liter EcoBoost? That's going to be a lot to run that on the dyno. How much horsepower and torque might a C4 Corvette need to do rolling burnouts on the street? Manual trans, 354 gears. If you take a look at the video that I have up where we put a turbo on a tune port deal which would be a C4 and motor, it makes more than enough torque to do rolling burnouts. I bought an LY6 with a 4L80 out of an 08 Chevy Express. How can I run this? You can do it with Holly. A Dominator will run that trans also, I think. BMW is also direct injected, and the turbos are in the valley, yeah. The FE runs 11s as it sits, no power adders. That's a cool FE, though. 400 horsepower for a 1-liter bike, making 200. Those are a 400 horsepower bike that's a lot of bike. Jeff, are you asking what a good turbo was? If you already made your eBay turbo made it 9,000 miles, that's it? That seems like not very much. Yeah, top fuelers can make more power and they can go faster. They're just trying to slow them down to make them safe, which is a good idea. General thoughts on power gains from increased rocker ratio versus cams with more lift. I've never seen anybody just put a cam in where you just change the lift the same amount that you change the rocker ratio, that how much lift that added. I've never seen that test, so I don't know which one of those would do more. The rocker ratio also changes duration a little bit, so you'd have to do that as well, and then see which one of those is better. My guess is that you wouldn't see much of a difference between those two things. But you can't change things dramatically with just rockers. But with a camshaft, you can add duration, which is really going to make more power. Which is better, ball bearing, turbo, or journal? That's usually not the question. I think maybe a ball bearing lasts longer, and there are guys here that will say that it spools better, but I've never seen a direct back-to-back test where it shows me that. It probably is a longevity thing. Yeah, 200 horsepower Hayabusa is that's already a lot of bike, and so guys that are making 300, 400, 500 horsepower with those because they're turbocharging and building them up, that's like an insane amount of power. Ooh, a V Max, nice, 1400 cc V Max on nitro, that's good. Goal is rolling burns with 315 tires. A boost will do that because the tune part already has, it makes lots and lots of torque, and it's a perfect kind of burnout deal because it's not going to RPM. But the tune port with boost on it, all of a sudden, if you add 200 foot-pounds of torque, you're adding it all where you're going to be spinning the tires. You're not adding it where you're going to be adding lots of mile an hour. So it's going to work out really well. Take a look at that video and you'll see. I mean, I was a little concerned when I started. I wasn't looking at the torque numbers. I was looking at the horsepower numbers, and when I'm running the dyno, I'm looking at the air fuel and stuff and making sure everything's okay. And I thought, well, that didn't seem like it made a lot of power. But when we're looking at a percentage gain of a motor that's not really making very much power to begin with, and you're looking at a 50% change, it's just not a big change. But the torque was like huge. FJ 1300s. So increased rocker ratios could be comparable to just upgrading to a mild cam. No, absolutely not. Because like I said, you'll never see a camshaft that only does what the rocker ratio does. An upgrading to a cam, if you have a cam, you've changed the duration. So a camshaft in an LS, for instance, might get you 40, 50, 70, 80 horsepower, how much ever cam you put in it. A rocker ratio might get you 10 or 12 or 8 or 15, depending on when exactly you're doing what the rest of the combination is. You'll never get the kind of gain from rocker ratio that you will get with any kind of decent camshaft. You could put in a cam that's this much different than a stock one, I guess, and get a rocker ratio change and equal that. But every other cam that I've ever tested has been a lot more than just a rocker ratio change. Teaches how to optimize tunes. I'm not a tuner, so you'd be the wrong guy to ask. But the way that I do it is I ask the motor and I'm only doing this at wide open throttle. I ask the motor what it wants. And the way that I ask that is I run low timing and run it rich and then start adjusting those things until the motor says, okay, I'm good here. I'm not making any more power. And then that's when we know that it has the right air fuel and it has the right amount of timing. On boost, I don't keep asking it. I ask it up to a point to where I know that, okay, this is probably about enough. John M., I'm interested to see about your math. 3.7 liter V6 Dodge, 210 plus 40 horsepower cum, plus 10 horsepower alloy intake, no accessories, plus 20 horsepower equals 550 horsepower. There's nothing wrong with that math. It all seems like common core stuff to me. Tim Miller, camshaft, Cleveland, 2V motor, 1970 Mustang. What the power with 4-speed, 350 gear, cam brand, part number. I don't have any part numbers for you because I don't know that. But you can take a look. I have Cleveland tests up. I think most of mine were 4V stuff, but you're going to see comparable gains with a 2V because they're kind of mild. Look for something that has 220 to 230 degrees of intake duration for a Cleveland for a street car, and you'll be doing pretty well. I've tested over and over on a small block Chevy. Rocker ratio changes. I've never seen any power gains, but the secret is to have the correct cam the first time. I would disagree with the fact that rockers never make a difference. They do. We've seen it. They don't always though, and that's also true. Is that sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Like we test rockers on an LS on a stock one. Usually they gain power because as we've seen from cam changes, the LS is very responsive to cam changes. It wants a change in cam timing. And so when you give it a little bit of a change in cam time with rockers, it goes, oh, I kind of like that. And that tells us that we're going in the right direction. Sometimes when you put a cam in a small block Chevy, for instance, in that example, you put a cam in and the cam's right. And you go from a 1.5 to a 1.6 rocker and it goes, I'm already good. I don't need anything else. And then also when you put a 1.6 rocker in there, it goes, I'm already good. And also, oh yeah, now I'm going to valve float. so you get that, which is not good either. Can I put a 1.8 rocker ratio on a Trek Flow 245 head and achieve goals like the masthead? No, you can't do that. Those are not equivalent things. That's a false equivalency. Daniel, so why would it stop it? Why would the turbo stop at an RPM? That's my question. So if you ran those turbos in a boost range where they were still making power, why would RPM stop them? That's what I don't understand. Because I've never run a turbo where RPM stopped me unless the boost was falling off. But if you still had enough flow to support that, the RPM shouldn't stop that. That's my question. With my 03 Silverado 5.3 76 precision Trek Norris cam tuned, I tow with it. Would it be a good idea to swap gears to 410s from 373s? You shouldn't need that with that combination. That turbo combination shouldn't have any lack of low speed power or towing power, especially when you're loaded. Yeah, Dan, that's a good idea. When running big cams, we put smaller rockers on it and see if it slows down. If it doesn't, then we run them just to save the valve springs. And that's the thing. If you have really, really high lift stuff, it's hard on valve spring. It really limits valve spring life. Will you test a higher compression 3800 with a turbo setup? The rods are weaker, though. Probably not. Katie's boosted. No one answered, but Marty Stromberger is the tune optimizer. I don't know what that is. My Maverick truck is turbocharged. Love it. I let my time to work on the Cleveland motors. I like Cleveland stuff. Like I said, when I've done the videos on the Cleveland stuff, from a factory standpoint, the Cleveland was the high watermark of small blocks, in my opinion. It certainly had the best factory cylinder. It had way better than the Chevy and way better than the Dodge stuff. The Pontiac stuff, I don't know if you could compare a 350 Pontiac to did it ever have a good enough head to compete with a Cleveland? I don't know that it did. Edwards out. Is every Cleveland cam a turbo or nitrous cam? Yeah, the cams I'm not really thrilled about are the and we've run a few of them because we have to run them sometimes. Like I ran them on the V6, 4.3 liter V6, the Magnum ones, the single pattern ones, and I just am not as big a fan with those. Gen 1 BorgWarner versus Gen 2. I've heard the Gen 1s are hard to beat, possibly better. I don't know what how you would equate those differences. I don't know what that is. I don't know how one of those is better than the other. I don't know if there's a flow limit or a longevity or what the deal is. Scott's out too. I saw the 306 cylinder with the Cleveland heads on. That was pretty impressive. Mechanical or electric fuel pump for a stock 440. If it's a stock one and it already has the pump on it, I would just use that. I don't have t-shirts available yet, Brian, but that's coming. A 3/4 race cam is a 3/4 turbo cam. 2 horsepower per cubic inch is a lot. Need drivetrain chats about the fancy 2-speed 9-inch and the 4+3 Corvette transmission. That's right. Richard, back to the intake manifold. Do you want to build straight runner lengths? There are no rules saying it needs to be aluminum. Make it out of steel. I don't want to make it out of steel. It's too heavy. Even though the dyno doesn't really care. Cleveland 4V heads need more RPM than you can survive. Ooh, got a 1971 Mustang with a 351 Cleveland. Is it a Boss 351? Thinking about putting a 4-barrel stock ported and polished heads. Bought a 232 cam. That's a good match. If you're doing all that, it's obviously not a Boss 351, but it's still, that's good. Do you have any books out for power recipes on small block Chevys? I don't, but there are a lot of good ones out there. And I do have, I think I have on the channel, I have power recipes for small blocks because I have them for small blocks and big blocks and LSs and small block Fords. I think I did it for all of those. So you could look up there and see. Runner length experiments are always cool. I've done a lot of those. A billion videos about nothing but that. A bazillion, I think. Happy birthday. Thank you, guys. Do you monitor oil pressure? Yeah, that's one of the critical things that I watch. And on factory LS stuff, I don't normally change the oil pump. Sometimes we will if it's an old one, but normally on the LS stuff, when we get it from the wrecking yard, we just run it the way that it is. We put new oil in it, and then we have a hard line that goes from the oil pressure fitting in the back of the block up to the fitting on the dyno. It's like a push lock deal. And that's one of the things I look at when I'm making runs and when we're tuning. I'm looking at the air fuel meter, and then we're also looking when I make a run. I'm glancing up and down between the oil pressure and then the air fuel meter. I just want to make sure those are okay. The oil pressure, the air fuel, and then to the engine, and then back to the oil pressure, and then as soon as the run's over, then I can come off. Then I can go look at the other stuff. I just want to make sure that nothing's falling off of the motor while it's making a run. I want to make sure that the oil pressure is okay, because that's definitely going to make me come off. And then the air fuel as well. If it should be 12.5 and it's 14.5, and then I come off the throttle for that too. Have you built any VGT turbos? I have not. I've not run any of those. On the chassis dyno, we have like factory ones, but not anything on the engine dyno. It feels good to be 25 again. Or when the extra ice cream stop. We've done that too. So just putting your hand on somebody's shoulder, then that means, hey, I saw something that you didn't see and you need to lift. And last year, have you had any lifter failures out of the box due to bad factory quality control? I don't run enough new lifters and stuff, so I haven't had that happen. What's the consensus on testing the sloppy best or truck Norris cam? Both of those are getting, when I go down there, they're gonna get boost. My vote is for BTR to shut everyone up about the 107-degree LSA. That's just silly. That LSA means nothing. If you look at the rest of the specs, that's not going to stop it from. If you look at what it does down low, it's obviously going to be a very good turbo cam. It's going to be more responsive than the best cam is, and then the best cam is going to make more power at the top at whatever given boost level. It's going to do exactly what they did NA, and we should all know that going in. Self-aligning rocker reliability. The ones with the guides on them, like we've run those in Fords and stuff before. I don't think I'd run those for real high performance deals. We run guide plates. Have you seen the Milliard guy on YouTube? He made a 6-cylinder Kawasaki using a Haxon welder. Nice. No, I haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out. That's like my kind of deal. Seems to be a lot of hype and conversation over the truck Norris cam. The truck Norris cam has something that other similar kinds of cams don't have. And years from now, Brian's going to talk about that, and he won't talk about it now because the other cam manufacturers don't know what that is. And he'll be discussing that later on, and the other guys will catch up and maybe figure it out. But there's a reason that cam does as well as it does, and it does do very well. It does really good down low and makes good power up top. If you look at it, especially compared to, we looked at the comparisons between the truck cams, which are already in the version 2s of the truck cams, which are already pretty good, and the torque cam and all those, and it's that good or better. So it's nice. That was my question, Daniel. That's a good question. Will a Rammer 5 Pontiac head fit on a 350 Pontiac bore? I don't know. That's what I don't know. Didn't they use what did they use a Rammer 4 head on the 301s? Because didn't some Canadian guys run the Firebirds in Trans Am with 301 Pontiacs in them that were hybrid versions of these? I thought that they were 301s, big bore 301s with Ram R4 or Ram R5 heads on them. Somebody might know better than me. I'm not as well versed on the Pontiac stuff. Do you have much advice on tuning for a small lobe separation like 107? Does it require more fueling? The lobe separation, you need to tell me a lot more than that, because that's not going to determine it. Largemouth, bass guy, obviously. I'm sure you hear this all the time. I just want to say thank you so much for the free content and information. Dude, I'm happy to help. A K2300 V12. That's a lot of bike. I thought the CBX was cool, and that's like even a whole nother level. Charles, Richard is a giant in the modern performance community. I think you spelled small fry incorrectly there. Is nothing insignificant, maybe? Pontiac had a tunnel port head similar to the Ford head. I remember reading about that. Did they use that? I thought that the 301 was like the DZ302 and the Boss, that they would go with a 4-inch bore and a 3-inch stroke, Uncle Squirrel. But what head did they use on it? Just tuning in general, what would be the difference between fueling a stock 5.3 and a truck Norris cam? Well, you just need to look at the power curve and see wherever the change in the power curve would be, it needs more fuel. Aaron's in the house. Yeah, not the 301 Turbo Trans Am, the 301 69 Trans Am. They did use a Ram Air 5. Ed, oh, you're going to be leaving at 8:30. Is that too late? No, that will be fine. I do want to do, have you considered or been asked to do podcasts? I do want to do a podcast. In fact, I'd like to have these as podcasts so people can just listen to them. But I'd like to do something more specific to that. And I will be doing interviews and stuff. The Ram Air 5 was a 303 Pontiac. Oh, the 303. Okay, that makes sense. What's a good size turbo for a single cam Honda? A GT25 or a GT28 are good. Are there any new engine masters being filmed? I think that they did film some stuff recently, but I don't know what they did. I wasn't involved in that. You need to do a video about valve timing. That would be a good one to talk to Brian about. Any resources you recommend for converting an old diesel Oldsmobile 350? I've never done that, but I think people have. Yeah, the max size for the Trans Am was 5 liters, so that was 305 cubic inches. You can put Airflow Research heads on a birthday cake and win races. Nice. The Airflow Research guys will salute you. Yes, everybody hit the like button because it's time for me to go. I have to run some cable underneath the house now. So I'm gonna crawl under there and get all dirty. It'll be fun. That's good stuff, you know. You gotta roll around in the dirt once in a while. Please touch a huge cam like a 240, 242. You have to have piston to valve clearance to run that. Crawling under the house, that's a woman's work. I'm not gonna let Lisa do that. Who is Viren? Viren, he's the VS Racing dude. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow, and the video that I'm putting up now is supercharged cams versus NA cams. Does an NA cam really belong on a supercharged motor? You guys get to decide. That will be tomorrow. Thanks, guys. I will see you all mañana.